Before we get started today, I want to take just a brief moment and tell you about John Maxwell's upcoming Live to Lead event on October 8th in Atlanta, Georgia. The Maxwell Company refers to this event as their Super Bowl of leadership content. I am honored to be among the speakers that day alongside Ed Milet, Valerie Burton, Jamie Kern Lima, and the always legendary John Maxwell himself. Visit L2LATL.com for more information and to get your ticket. That's L, the number 2, LATL.com. I hope to see you there. What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shape their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community. I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is founder and CEO of Lokai, Steven Izen. Lokai's brand of beaded bracelets have become a phenomenon, sold in 5,000 locations in 170 countries. The bracelets each contain a droplet of mud from the Dead Sea and water from Mount Everest to represent the highs and lows of Earth and of life. Steven paid his dues going door to door around New York City, trying to get stores to display his bracelets, and he was rejected 95% of the time. Eventually, his hard work and his discovery by celebrities like Justin Bieber, Cam Newton, and Blake Lively helped the company turn the corner, and they haven't looked back since. 6 years later, he founded his second company, Elements, which produces functional wellness drinks formulated to consistently balance the body's stress levels. I'm excited to hear how he is navigating the transition from founder to CEO and how running track at Cornell shaped his experience.
Really paying attention to every little detail and not getting lazy is very important. Whether it's product or packaging or design or P&L statements, the devil's in the details, and consumers know when you're cutting corners and trying to make that extra profit instead of give them the best possible product. There's no easy way to be successful. It's hard, but taking the hard route is usually the right route.
Steven, thanks for joining us.
Don, thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's been fun, obviously, doing the research and getting prepped for today's conversation. I know, looking at your history, you grew up in Massachusetts, and while you were there, you ran track and field, but you also were a wide receiver on the football team, one of the great team sports of all time, and the other is generally considered a little more individual. What drew you to the two different sports?
Football and track, very different, but also have a lot of similarities. On the football side, I have always loved coach screaming at you and getting in your face and everyone really needing to rally together. And yeah, I think it's truly the sport where you cannot win without the rest of your team and you live and die by your team.
Yeah.
On the track side, my favorite event is actually the 4x100. I love the relays. Passing off the baton is one of my favorite things in sports because it looks so easy on TV when those guys are doing it, but they're going full out 100%, and it just so seamlessly gets passed from one guy to the next. And the smallest little mistake and that handoff explodes. So team has always been something that I have loved, and your podcast is so relevant because corporate relationships and building a successful company is so much about team.
We've had a couple of other runners on the podcast so far, but I haven't dug into this idea. You've put it so eloquently about the handoff or the pass off of the baton from one to the other. Tell me about the practice required in learning some of those habits. How did it affect you as you grew as a leader?
It's interesting. I grew up very competitive as an athlete over the past 7 years of growing and maturing as a CEO of Lokai. The importance of team is the lesson that I have learned the hardest. And now looking back and thinking about all my sports years and those times where teammates made mistakes and the way that you treat them after they make mistakes and going through the highs and lows of losing games, winning games, the importance of team seems so obvious. But I think when you're starting a company and you're the only one and you have that I'm going to do it no matter what, no one's going to stop me mentality, and you think you can do everything in your company better than everyone else, it's just not true. The importance of team, it's so relevant to what we do every day in our corporate jobs.
Looking back at your football career, it's kind of fun. Our research team found a 2009 highlight video of you wearing jersey number 30 from your football days. Some of the absolute best content on YouTube, without question. Surprised it only had 3 million views. Was there a lesson from the sport of football that you've been implementing when we start talking about the need for each person to, well, they're in New England, right? They talk a lot about do your job. Is there something from football that you've woven into some of your growth experience with your team?
So my senior year, we went undefeated until the New England championship and we lost. And I've realized that in the corporate world, there's no winning or losing. It's about the journey and learning and the experience that you have along the way. Especially when you look back at the end, you lose, you think that's the end, and football's ruined forever for you because you lost your last game. But I've learned that there are going to be highs and lows all of the time. And it's about how you react to those and how you continue through the journey and the way that you treat other people. That is the real reward for what you do, not a trophy at the end of the tunnel.
So with football, you lost in that championship game, but in track, as a senior, you were both the team captain, and your team went on and won a seventh consecutive state championship at the Independent School Track Association. You talk about these being journeys, right? Not wins or losses. Is there a moment you remember along that journey, kind of a highlight moment in your run up to win a state championship?
Running 10:9 in the 100-yard dash, I had always been trying to break that 11-second barrier, and time after time, I was 11, 11-1, 11-2, and never was able to break it. And I think just about every day putting in work and practice, maybe you don't see that reward or benefit on a daily basis, but crossing the finish line and breaking 11 seconds and just feeling like, okay, I finally accomplished something. All of that hard work that I've put in is now coming to fruition. If you keep putting in the work, it will come.
Was there a similar number threshold that you, as an entrepreneur, crossed at some point in which you felt a similar level of relief or accomplishment or joy?
Actually, right now, I'm feeling that. I thought in the past that that was a financially based goal or number. As I've matured and grown, I've hit those numbers and continue to just chase and chase and chase. I've realized that that's not what it's about. I have the best team I've ever had right now, both from a talent perspective and also morale and teamwork perspective. And being able to build out more of a 3 to 5 year plan and know where the company's headed and have larger long term goals and aspirations with everyone behind those goals driving towards the same thing. That's what's really exciting me right now.
That's awesome. Isn't it funny? At a certain stage, we do transcend from financial goals as the numeric sense of victory to realizing that there are other things that actually have far greater value.
Absolutely.
I had a chance to read some about your high school track and field coach, Fran Kirby.
Yeah. One of
What
the
an
greatest guys.
What a legend too, and what he was able to accomplish before he retired. Something you took from Coach Kirby that made you better as you headed into this phase of life.
He always had a very uplifting, optimistic, playful mentality. He was never too hard on people. He never took anything too seriously. And I think having that easygoing, don't put pressure on yourself. Whatever you do, if you work hard, it's good enough. Like he just so optimistic all the time. That lightness about him, and he was very comedic. It just I brought that with me.
It's interesting because I heard you earlier refer to your football coaches as yelling at you,
Yeah.
getting in your faces. So it sounds like you had both extremes as coaches. Was there a style that you settled into as a result of seeing those two extremes of leadership?
Yeah, I definitely lean more on the calm, cool, collected CEO. Like I've never screamed before. At the same time, though, our company is very sink or swim. People come in and you have to be self motivated. There's not many safety nets and there's not a lot of hand holding. It's you come in and if you're self motivated and you work hard and you want to learn yourself, you really grow yourself. And I think that's the startup world in general, right? You kind of get thrown into the fire and the speed at which things are going, and you either sink or swim. And so I think people that are attracted to startups tend to be self motivated themselves as well.
Yeah. Self motivation is a real high characteristic of many people who have been involved in athletics. No one can make you get up and run that extra mile in the morning other than
Yeah.
you. You then go on to Cornell and you're going to run track and field. That's a big jump in the caliber of talent that you're gonna be competing against. What was that like having to wake up for that first time and realize, "Dang, I've got a lot of work to do to continue to fit at this next level." What was that transition like for you?
That transition was tough, especially my freshman year. I mean, on the Cornell team, I was definitely not one of the fastest guys. Throughout my 4 years, I was never the star of the team or one of the fastest guys, but, showed up every day. I worked hard. I did my best. I was a team player, and I didn't travel much with the team, but sometimes I'd still take my own car and go with everybody, watch the meets, and we won the Ivy League championship year after year after year. Cornell, when I was there, was the best team by far. A great group of guys who supported each other, who wanted each other to do well, and you could feel it. People hung out with each other out off the track. That really shows the team mentality. And the older guys led the younger guys. So it's that whole group feel
Yeah,
put me in my place a little bit. It humbled me, but I loved the sport and I loved training 6 days a week, 3
yeah.
hours a day. It's definitely an intense 4 years.
Not for the faint of heart.
No. And with track, and Dolphin knows this as well, you don't get to play a game at the end. Your sport is your workout. And so it's really a sport for people that want to punish themselves.
How do you create that kind of informal relationship bonding that you had on a team like that in your business life, especially in a time of pandemic when we don't get a chance to share common space?
It's about transparency, communication, being open with people, being real. When you're real and you lead by example and you genuinely want to help and support other people and see them do well, they can feel it and they know versus the more kind of shallow side of it, which is, hey, I want to make a bunch of money. You need to work hard so you can help me do that. Right. I've learned over the years, it's also a lot more rewarding to help other people be successful and see them do well. That's one of my favorite parts of the job.
One of the things that's come up as a consistent theme among some of the leaders is just the high empathy factor, that desire to kind of know what makes other people tick and then being able to kind of play into that, as you're saying, helping them become successful. Was there a place or someone that really exhibited that for you?
I'd say my dad. My dad was a founder, entrepreneur, CEO, and he's always trying to teach me and help me. And as a kid, you never want to listen to your dad. But as I've gotten a little bit older, I've realized all the lessons that he's snuck in there and taught me without me knowing. And he's definitely my biggest inspiration.
I love that. The key premise of our podcast here is this idea that sports, according to Ernst and Young, has been a driving force in the leadership growth of many C-level executives. Sports makes you a better leader. Would you agree with that premise?
Yeah, absolutely. For so many different reasons, I think from the learning about highs and lows and how you deal with the lows and you get back to the highs from a self-confidence standpoint when you work hard and you win and you achieve something. I mean, there's no greater feeling than winning in a sports game, right? And so having that drive and mentality that you want to work hard to achieve that goal or that success is absolutely a factor in the corporate world. I think it gives you an edge. Even though I'm not playing organized sports right now, athletics is still a huge piece of my life. I mean, with the two babies, it's a little bit tough, but I try to do it every single morning because I have better days and I'm a better leader when I work out in the morning. I know that about myself, and so I do it.
Love it. When you talked about entrepreneurship, you mentioned your father and his role modeling, but obviously that was seriously taken by you even as a young person. I read a story about you in high school starting a small woodworking company to make custom wood pins and then going around Boston to sell wood pens. Compare that idea of self-starter and wanting to be an entrepreneur to some of what was required for you, even today, as you said, to get up and it's easy to hit snooze and not go work out, but something about that self-starter nature that maybe you could share with us.
Yeah, and that was my first company. I actually got into that because I love woodworking. I did work woodworking throughout high school, and so realized I could make these pens and then go sell them. What I've realized is you have to be passionate and love what you do. That is the only way that you are going to be really successful because it's hard work. Whether it is my pen company or it is Lokai or Elements, which is my new beverage company, they all started with a personal passion, not just, hey, this is a good idea to make a bunch of money. You're not going to get up and do something if you don't want to do it every day. It has to be something that you love and you genuinely want to spend time on.
You referenced Lokai, which you actually began while at Cornell. I think it's fantastic. I mean, I'm a huge fan. Everyone in our family wears them. And because of the heart and soul that you put into them, the 5,000 locations, 170 countries, I read, is where your bracelets are now available. And can you take us back to the beginning and maybe share the why, the passion play that began you on the Lokai journey?
It was after my freshman year in college, and I was on vacation with my family and friends, thinking about how lucky I was to be there. But that week, unfortunately, my grandfather was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I was really close to him growing up. He drove me to school every day, taught me to play golf and pool, and that brought me to a low. And it just got me thinking about the highs and lows that I was going through in life and how everyone has highs and lows. It doesn't matter your age, demographic, income level, we all have them. And I'd always had that entrepreneurial mindset. And so I said, okay, well, what are the highest and lowest points on earth? Mount Everest and the Dead Sea. And how could I take elements from those two places and incorporate them in a product that people could wear? The idea for Lokai was always about helping people find balance in their life. Lokai did that through the message of staying humble and hopeful. Every day is a reminder to stay balanced, staying humble when you're on top of the world and hopeful when you've hit a low. And I told my dad the idea for Lokai, and he said, that's a great idea, but everyone has great ideas. Now go execute it. That's the hard part.
There's some parental
Oh,
advice, right?
yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
just tell me an idea, son, go do it.
Yeah, that was the start. I worked on it for the next 3 years in college, and then I launched it June of 2013 when I graduated, which launch back then was putting up a website that no one went to and carrying my display door to door around New York, knocking on stores, getting turned down 95% of the time, just telling people the story over and over again. People say, "Oh, Lokai overnight success." We're 7 years old now, but those first 2 years were a grind.
Wow, 95% rejection rate. I wonder how many of those stores you're now in.
Some, yeah,
It's always fun, isn't it? Like to go back and realize that, yeah, you had a chance. You could have been there at the beginning.
yeah, absolutely.
And then out of that, you grow into elements. Tell me where that comes from and where that idea emanated.
Yeah, so we wanted to create a second product, a second brand that helped people find balance in a different way. But we didn't want to just write "Find Your Balance" on a T-shirt and sell it. We wanted something that authentically delivered that promise. We learned about adaptogens, which are a class of plants that, in high enough doses, have functional benefits that you can feel. And we worked with a scientist and an ethnobotanist to create elements, which are a line of functional wellness drinks made with clinically effective levels of adaptogens. We have four different formulas: Vitality, Focus, which are two uplifting ones, and then Calm and Sleep, which are two unwinding ones. We launched the beverages in August of this year, and so far people are loving them. We're in all doors at Wegmans. We're being tested in CVS and Walgreens, as well as available on our own site and Amazon.
It had to be a challenge, right? You got a great idea, you developed it well, then suddenly you get thrown a curveball, coronavirus. The world as we know it kind of shuts down. How did the adjustments required in your sports journey help you create the right mindset to adjust?
It goes back to team. I learned through Lokai the importance of your team, and the stronger your team, the more successful you're going to be. And so when building elements, I assembled the strongest possible team I could. And when COVID hit, it wasn't a big deal because my head of sales knew what he had to do to adjust his plan. Same with operations, same with finance. And we made the necessary changes, and we've been able to thrive during COVID. The underlying message that I would give to anyone listening here is your team is everything. Whether it's sports or business, you really can't do it yourself. And first is people that you genuinely want to work with and spend time with. You're constantly with them, so you have to enjoy their presence and who they are as individuals. Doesn't mean you have to be best friends with them, but you have to enjoy working with them and have the same beliefs as them. And then two, I hire people that are better than me at what they do. If you hire people that are better than you at sales and finance and operations, you trust them, you believe in them, and you let them do their job. You focus on being the best CEO that you can be.
Wow. You and I are partners on the National Make-A-Wish board, so I've gotten to see your heart in action with the Wish organization. But both your companies, Lokai and Elements, have a very significant charitable underpinning. 10% of your net profits go back to charity. Will you share how you pick those partnerships and how you think about the impactful nature of what you get to do in the development of your companies?
It's just a responsibility of young founders and CEOs today to make the world a better place and start companies that do good in the world. So for me, giving back has always been something that I've really believed in. And the idea of Lokai came from my grandfather having Alzheimer's. And we've been able to donate over $8.5 million to different nonprofit organizations through Lokai, which
Wow.
is one of the highlights for me as the CEO of the company. And any company that I start or am a part of will need to have that give back, better for the world view and mentality.
Yeah. I love the way you put it, though, that young leaders need to be thinking this way. I love that in the corporate world, more and more leaders who are a little longer in the tooth have grown to adopt that philosophy, especially in the last few years. Are you serving as mentor to any other executives who might be thinking about how to begin an organization that has a charitable underpinning?
Um, I have a lot of friends that are starting companies that I try to influence in a positive way, and some are doing that incredibly well. But I'm still early in my days learning and have some great mentors. I don't know if I'm quite ready to truly be a mentor to
Oh, I
someone. Yeah.
think you are, brother. I think you are. Speaking of mentorship, though, I read that you had a great one at Cornell, Cal Turvey, one of your professors in the Dyson School.
Yeah.
And you've referred to him in the past as a mentor to you, someone whose guidance was valued. Is there a story about a lesson, something that he taught you that you still carry with you these days?
Yeah, I do remember one great story. I actually was overwhelmed. I had a bunch of exams coming up in the next couple days, and I was also dealing with a bunch of Lokai stuff. And he's my advisor as well. I was like, "Oh, I'm all stressed. What should I do?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm at the bar. Come have a beer with me." And he helped me realize to slow down and take some pressure off and to just get out of my head. And that break to then go back to work and study really helped me clear my mind.
Wow. Every once in a while, got to head down to the bar. That's strong. And I'm sure Cornell will put that on their website somewhere. Tell me.
I was of legal drinking age.
Okay, good. One of the profiles I read about you in Cornell Magazine, you offered 7 pieces of advice to future graduates. I thought was pretty neat. And there were 2 of them that really stood out to me. One of them we've covered several pieces of today's conversation. You talk about it's all about the people. But the other one, which I love this one, was don't cut corners. As you're planning and looking at the big picture, don't lose sight of the little details. Sometimes people are in such a hurry that cutting corners seems to be the easiest thing to do. How have you held yourself to that standard? And is there an example there you might share?
Yeah, and people have given me that advice throughout my career as well. That's what's got it into me, whether it's product or packaging or design or P&L statements. I think the devil's in the details, and consumers know when you're cutting corners and doing things cheaply, and you're trying to make that extra profit instead of give them the best possible product. There's no easy way to be successful. It's hard, but taking the hard route is usually the right route. So, yeah, really paying attention to every little detail and not getting lazy is very important.
Taking the hard route is usually the right route. That's awesome. I'm making notes of that. That's a great lesson right there for today. One of the things that really stood out when we prepped to work with you was that most of the other interviews we've done for this podcast have been with corporate executives. They've joined an organization and rose or flourished within. You're our first true entrepreneur. Started it from college.
Mhm.
To be extraordinary for the long haul, one of the challenges in entrepreneurship is that you have to constantly be both elevating your game and recreating what you're doing, finding new products, new things to do. What plans do you have for these 2 brands to level up? And what are maybe some of the things we can look for in maybe some of your vision around that idea of constantly looking for new ways to impact the world?
To that point, one of the biggest challenges that I had over the past 7 years of being a entrepreneur is that transition from founder to CEO through the Make-A-Wish board and just being on the Make-A-Wish board, learning about processes and how long things take to develop and implement. It's really helped me understand that you have to have a change of mentality, going from that founder that's willing to run straight through walls and not listen to people say no, to really take a more listening approach, long-term approach, setting goals and plans that are multi-year out. That's been really rewarding for me to be able to learn that skill. Knowing where the company is going in the next 3 years is very rewarding from the old days of not knowing what's going to happen in 3 weeks.
Yeah, it is a different you're right, there's that shift there you have to do. I know that your grandfather, who we've referenced a couple different times, was a Marine, and that you had an
Mhm.
opportunity a couple of years ago through mutual relationship to meet a spectacular Marine named Kyle Carpenter, a young man who was presented the Congressional Medal of Honor. Incredible backstory. Tell me about that partnership with Kyle and what you've been able to do now with a bracelet that actually works to benefit Marines.
That was all you, Don. You made that intro. Kyle is an amazing, amazing dude. What strikes me most about him is how humble he is.
Yeah.
For someone that has gone through so much and has gotten such a big honor and medal, to be that cool and normal and just another guy. And we really wanted to support other veterans. So we did a partnership together and we made a Lokai that gives back to families and veterans that have gone through a tough time and their mental health, because that's a big piece that you don't see the scars, but they are there. And that's a way that we thought we could help.
Wow. Well, I do know from talking to Kyle that he values that partnership with you as much as any that he's had a chance to establish in his time since receiving the medal.
And his book is incredible. I wonder who wrote that.
I don't know, but I'm glad you pimped that out. Thank you. We should make a partnership here. If you buy a book, you get a bracelet. Anyway, Stephen, it is always an honor to be in your presence, to get a chance to learn from you, but more importantly, to dig into that mindset of how some of the athletic lessons you learned help you define and build the teams that you're building today. Congratulations on all your success. Can't wait to see what happens next.
Thanks, Don. I really appreciate it.
Stephen offers a distinctive blend of unwavering confidence and hard won humility. And by the way, the concept that his humility was hard won is so very valuable. After listening to this episode, one thing's for sure: you will never look at a baton handoff in a track relay the same way. For more great metaphors from track to business, check out Corporate Competitor's very first episode with Lindblad Expedition CEO Dolph Burley, who ran track at Harvard. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir. How
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.